Riviere Souterraine, Cave, Solo Explorer Lost. In March 2015, a 34-year-old amateur caver named Thomas entered a large cave system in the mountains of southern France alone. He had visited the cave twice before with friends and believed he knew the main passages well enough to explore solo. Thomas brought a helmet with a mounted headlamp, a handheld backup torch, and a small pack with water and a sandwich. He told his girlfriend he would be back by dinner. The cave was over 3 kilometers long with hundreds of side passages, narrow crawlways, and junctions where 3 or 4 tunnels branched off in different directions. For the first 2 hours, Thomas moved confidently through the familiar sections. Then he decided to explore a side passage he had never been in before. Passage twisted and turned, dipped low, then rose again into a series of small chambers connected by narrow gaps. Thomas squeezed through gap after gap, excited by the feeling of discovering something new. He did not mark his route. He did not leave any trail markers. He did not count the turns. When he decided to turn back, he realized he could not remember which gap he had come through. The chambers all looked the same. Gray limestone walls, muddy floors, and darkness. He picked a direction and crawled. After an hour, he emerged into a passage he did not recognize. He tried another direction. Same result. Unfamiliar rock, unfamiliar shapes, unfamiliar darkness. Thomas was lost. He sat down and turned off his headlamp to save battery. The darkness was absolute. He could not see his hand touching his face. He turned the lamp back on and tried again. For the next 6 hours, Thomas walked, crawled, climbed, and squeezed through every passage he could find. He ended up in the same chamber 3 times. He was walking in circles and he knew it. His headlamp began to flicker. The battery was dying. He switched to his backup torch. It lasted 2 more hours before it went dark too. Now Thomas was in total darkness with no light at all. He sat on the cave floor with his back against the wall and tried to stay calm. He ate his sandwich slowly. He sipped his water. He talked to himself to keep from panicking. When his girlfriend called the police that evening, a search team was dispatched to the cave. The local cave rescue group entered the system with maps and powerful lights. They found Thomas 19 hours after he entered the cave, sitting in the dark about 800 meters from the entrance. He was shivering, dehydrated, and disoriented, but alive. When the rescuers shone their headlamps on him, Thomas started crying. He said the worst part was not the cold or the hunger. It was knowing he was walking in circles but having no way to stop. Every direction felt right and every direction was wrong. Thomas never went caving alone again. He said the cave had taught him something he would never forget. In the dark, your brain lies to you and the walls never tell the truth. Mammoth Ridge Cave. Lost group light failure? In the fall of 2007, a group of 5 college students from a university in Kentucky decided to explore a wild cave in the hills outside their campus town. The cave was on private land, and the farmer who owned the property told them they were welcome to go in as long as they were careful. He said the cave went back about a mile and had lots of side passages. He warned them not to go too deep. The students brought cheap flashlights from a convenience store. 2 of them had headlamps. None of them had backup lights. None of them had helmets. None of them told anyone exactly where they were going or when they planned to come back. They entered the cave around noon on a Saturday. For the first hour, everything was fun. The main passage was tall enough to walk through, and the students laughed and shouted, listening to their voices echo off the limestone walls. Then the passage split into 3 directions. They chose the middle one. It narrowed into a low crawlway that forced them onto their hands and knees. After 20 minutes of crawling, the passage opened into a large room with several more tunnels branching off in different directions. By now, they had lost track of which tunnel they had come from. They picked a direction and kept going. Then the first flashlight died. The batteries were cheap and had been sitting on a store shelf for months. Within the next hour, 2 more flashlights failed. Now the group had only 2 headlamps between 5 people. They turned around and tried to find the way out. But every passage looked the same. Gray rock, muddy floor, and darkness in every direction. They walked for 2 hours and ended up back in the same large room they had started from. They had walked in a complete circle without realizing it. Panic set in. One of the students began crying. Another started hyperventilating. The group leader told everyone to sit down, turn off the headlamps to save battery, and think. They sat in total darkness for 30 minutes. Nobody spoke. In the silence, one of them heard something. A faint sound of dripping water coming from one of the passages. They remembered that the entrance had a small stream running along the floor. They decided to follow the sound of water. It took them 4 more hours of crawling. backtracking and following the stream before they finally saw a faint gray glow ahead. It was daylight. They stumbled out of the cave entrance at 2 in the morning, 14 hours after they went in. They were covered in mud, soaked to the skin, and shaking from cold and fear. The farmer found them sitting in his field at dawn, too exhausted to walk back to their car. He shook his head and said, "I told you not to go too deep. Every caving manual in the world says the same thing. Bring 3 sources of light per person." 5 students brought 5 cheap flashlights between them. The cave nearly kept all of them. Paris Catacombs lost forever. In November 1793, a 61-year-old man named Philibert Asperc walked down a staircase and never came back up. Philibert was a doorkeeper at the Val-de-Grâce military hospital in Paris during the French Revolution. Beneath the hospital courtyard, there was a staircase that led down into the Paris catacombs. The catacombs were a massive network of old limestone quarry tunnels stretching over 300 kilometers beneath the city. Nobody knows why Philibert went down those stairs. Some say he wanted to explore the tunnels out of curiosity. Others say he was trying to reach the cellars of a nearby monastery to steal their famous liquor. Whatever his reason, Philibert went into the darkness carrying only a single candle. One candle. That was all the light he had between himself and 300 kilometers of pitch-black tunnels. At some point, the candle went out. Maybe it burned down to nothing. Maybe a gust of damp underground air blew it out. Either way, when that flame died, so did any chance Philibert had of finding his way home. The catacombs beneath Paris are not a simple tunnel with a start and an end. They are a maze. Hundreds of passages that split, connect, loop back, and dead end in every direction. Every wall looks the same. Every turn feels the same. In total darkness, without any point of reference, a person will walk in circles without ever knowing it. Philibert wandered. Nobody knows for how long. A healthy person can survive about 3 days without water. In the cold, damp air of the catacombs, about 14 degrees Celsius year-round, he might have lasted longer. But eventually his strength gave out. He collapsed somewhere in the tunnels, alone, in complete darkness, surrounded by the bones of 6 million dead Parisians. And then the world forgot about him. The French Revolution was raging above ground. People disappeared every day during the Reign of Terror. One missing doorkeeper was nothing unusual. 11 years passed. In 1804, workers mapping the tunnels found a skeleton lying on the floor of a remote gallery. The bones were dressed in rotting clothes. A hospital keyring still hung from the belt. That keyring was how they identified him. Philibert Asperc, the doorkeeper who had walked into the dark in 1793 and never walked out. They buried him right where they found him. His gravestone was placed in the tunnel floor. His grave is still there today, deep in the restricted section of the catacombs beneath the streets of modern Paris. People who explore the illegal parts of the tunnels sometimes visit his tomb. They call him the patron saint of the catacombs. But Philibert Asperc was not a saint. He was a man with one candle who walked into 300 kilometers of darkness and never found the light again. Paris catacombs. Teenagers lost 3 days. In June 2018, 2 teenage boys in Paris decided to sneak into the catacombs. They were 16 and 17 years old. The Paris catacombs are a massive underground network of tunnels stretching over 300 kilometers beneath the city. Only a tiny section is open to tourists. The rest is illegal to enter. Signs warn people to stay out. Police patrol the entrances. But every year, hundreds of thrill seekers find a way in through hidden manholes, broken walls, and unmarked entrances scattered across the city. The 2 boys slipped underground through one of these secret entrances. At first, it was exciting. The tunnels were cool and quiet, lined with stacked human bones from centuries of Paris burials. Skulls stared at them from the walls. The boys took photos and explored deeper. Then they made a wrong turn. In the catacombs, one wrong turn is all it takes. The tunnels all look the same. Low stone ceilings, narrow passages, and endless forks that lead to more forks. There are no signs underground. There are no landmarks. Without a map or a guide, every direction looks identical. The boys tried to retrace their steps, but every passage they chose led them somewhere they did not recognize. They were walking in circles. Their phone batteries died. Their lights grew weaker. The temperature underground was a constant 14 degrees Celsius, cool enough to slowly drain the heat from their bodies hour after hour. 1 day passed, then 2. They had no food and no clean water. They huddled together in the cold darkness, shivering, waiting for someone to find them. On the surface, their friends raised the alarm when the boys did not come home. Police were called and specialist catacomb patrol teams were sent underground. But searching 300 kilometers of tunnels for two teenagers is like searching an entire city block by block. The search teams brought dogs. Rescue dogs trained to track human scent through tunnels and underground spaces. In the early hours of the third day, the dogs picked up a trail. The rescue team followed the scent through passage after passage until they found the two boys sitting in the dark, shaking with cold. Both teenagers were suffering from hypothermia. They were rushed to hospital and treated. Both survived. They had been lost underground for 3 full days. 72 hours of darkness, cold, hunger, and the knowledge that the tunnels around them held the bones of 6 million people who would never leave either. The boys never went back.